everyone, I'm Tammy and I founded Southeast Asia's premier all-women's esports league called FSL, and I'll be your moderator on this panel for today. First off, I'd like to introduce my illustrious guests who are joining me as panelists. Charmaine Crooks is the VP of the Global Esports Federation and the chair of the Athletes, Players and Community Commission. She is also a five-time Olympian and Olympic silver medalist and is currently the president and founder of NGU Consultants, which is a sports marketing management and corporate consulting company. Next, I'd like to move to Mitch Asgara. He's the CEO of Southeast Asia at Galaxy Racer, which is an esports gaming and lifestyle organization headquartered in Dubai. And last but not least is Joy Lee, who is the Director of Brand and Marketing at Team SMG, or Still Moving Under Gunfire, which is an esports organization founded by singer JJ Lin. So with these diverse backgrounds and experiences, I'm looking forward to gaining new insights into the differences, opportunities, and challenges that women have or face in the esports world. So let's first go to Charmaine to speak a little about her experience as an Olympic athlete and her thoughts on the groundbreaking amendments during the Tokyo Olympics to promote inclusion and equality. So hi Charmaine, it's great to
Hi,
have you on the
Tammy.
panel. And
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
not many people can say they've taken part in any Olympic Games, let alone, won an Olympic medal. So I think gave us some great insight into what training to be an Olympic athlete is like, and whether there are differences in the training regimes for men and women.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Tammy, for bringing us all together. It's so wonderful to meet Mitch and Joy, and on this incredible occasion of the very first Global Esport Games. What an honor it is to be with you all, and of course with Singapore as the first GEG Games. And I have great memories of being in Singapore when I was attending the first Youth Olympic Games. So Singapore certainly has a great tradition in sport and innovation and in looking forward to the future of sport and of course esport now. So really good to be here on your panel to speak about something that, certainly close to all of our hearts. But to your question about, as an Olympian, I've been very, very honored to have competed for Canada a long time ago in the sport of athletics. And I was equally honored to stand on the podium with my teammates when we won our silver medal in the 4x400 meter relay. And I also ran the 800 and 400 and had a very long career traveling all around the world, competing for Canada. And so, there's so many parallels when I think about being an Olympic athlete and the training that goes into it. Many long hours, as it is with esport athletes, as they look to advance their careers. But really, there's also a great sense of responsibility, I feel, that comes with being an active athlete and even as a retired athlete. But during my career, my training again was very focused on following a very strict plan. There was a lot of focus on not just the physical training that we had to do, and every athlete who trains knows that when you are there, you're not doing it alone. You're with a very big team. And just as a small example, I mean, the average athlete has maybe 5 to 10 people around them, from your coach, your manager, your agent, your physio, your sport med doctor, your podiatrist, your nutritionist, whatever. It takes a big team to be able to do what we do as Olympians and Paralympians and also esport athletes. But I think the other piece of it now too, when I look back at my career and I see what athletes are doing today, a lot of it also is on the mental focus, right? The mental planning, the mental focus that goes into the preparation for athletes. Now, when I was running, we didn't have a lot of that, but it's great to see that now that the mental side of sports and training and the impact that we have on ourselves and others has really taken to the forefront. So, my career spanned quite a long time. And right now it really feels like full circle because I continue in sports. I continue to volunteer to support the current and the next generation. And it's really, really great to see where the athletes are going in terms of their performance and using technology as well to be able to stay in sports longer, to assess their training, to assess the competition, to be able to stay healthier longer through nutrition and health and sleep therapy, whatever it is, to be able to get that extra edge. And so I think athletes of yesterday had that, and athletes today are certainly using technology. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that here, during this esport conference that's a part of this. But it's something that I think has really given athletes a very good edge in terms of how they can compete better and compete safer and monitor their body as they move along. So, long career, had a lot of made a lot of great friendships, a lot of great opportunities. But again, very proud that I can now be able to support it, and through the Global Esports Federation, the work that I do there, and also with athletes at the local level as well.
Talking a little bit more about the Olympics. What do you think of the introduction of mixed gender events in the Olympics? I personally find that really exciting. And it's a very new concept, and I'm very happy that the IOC has picked it up. But I'd like to hear from you, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first, when I was training, I would train with the men quite a bit, right? So whether it were training in the weight room together, or training with some of our running intervals. So, but when I saw that the innovation and the opportunity for gender diversity was going to be part of the Olympic Games, as it was in Tokyo, and when we saw 18 mixed gender events, I thought that it's a real historic moment for the Olympic movement, because I think what it does, it opens up more opportunities for not just for the athletes specifically, but also, one of the hallmarks is really around the universality of sport, and how do we make it more accessible? How do we make it more relevant? How do we make it more, as well, promoting it through the media and through different channels? So when young people are inspired by the Olympics, they see something in it that is for them, and something that might be more relatable. So through the innovation and the gender diversity that has been happening, particularly in Tokyo, which was a real moment for the Olympic movement, I think that it's very positive. And I got real excited watching the 4x400 meter relays that I used to run, and watching those mixed gender races were really fun. And of course, equestrian and athletics and archery. I mean, so many of the sport. But I think one of the other pieces of the Olympics in Tokyo was, it was 49% gender diverse. So it really was, I know for us in Canada, it was our women did so well. Really the rise of so many women at the Olympics through their performances, and the gender, mixed gender events are certainly part of that. And again, it just builds more exposure for the sport. And it was great to see how things were, moved around as far as the scheduling was concerned, because there were some athletes who did individual events and then did the mixed gender events. I think that it's part of the future, and I think it's really great to see.
So I'd just like to hop over to Mitch here, to give his thoughts on mixed gender events in esports specifically. What do you think this would look like in esports, and do you think this is actually feasible?
Okay, hi Tammy, hi Joy, hi Fermain. Very honored to be here. Essentially, when it comes to mixed gender in esports, I guess it has a lot of perspectives in it, right? There are women that would prefer facing it off with men at the end of the day, because I think it's about the challenge, it's about the norm and whatsoever. But at the end of the day, there has to be a bridge to get there. So while it is prevalent right now that most of the esports tournaments are practically open to mixed gender teams, at the end of the day, we need a bridge to empower women to actually get to that point of, well, I wouldn't say lack of confidence, but to that point of inclusivity in the scene. While majority of women, while majority or sorry, while a big chunk of gamers around the world are actually women, like more than 30% or almost half of the gamers in the world are women. Essentially, at the pinnacle of gaming, which is esports, there is extremely low volume of women in tournaments and competitions. And this comes across with a multitude of concerns and problems, essentially, which all of us here, I think, are tackling on facing and essentially trying to solve. So, at the end of the day, in terms of women entering esports through mixed gender teams, yes, I agree that at the end of the day, that is the goal, right? But getting there, the journey towards that is what we need to build that bridge to get there. So, in so far as I'm concerned, I think exclusive tournaments for women are part of the bridge to get there. At the end of the day, inclusion of women in equal support in terms of organizations like ours are a bridge to get there. And at the end of the day, we can't really force it immediately. It has to be embraced, not just by men at the end of the day, or not just by women at the end of the day, but by the general gaming public at the end of the day. So in each step of the way, it goes without saying that in terms of support, in terms of every relative resource available to current men in the esports pinnacle should be given to women as well. And through that journey that we try to build their inclusivity and belongingness in the community, it's a journey that all of us have to work on together, because we can't do it alone. While Galaxy Racer has a lot of programs and has taken a lot of effort to actually include women in esports at the end of the day through various support in terms of resources, various support in terms of manpower, just like what Tremaine said, from the coach to the analyst to everything in between, through the boot camps that we put them in at par with what it is that we give our male teams. Um, that journey is not a one man show. Is not a one organization show. It takes the whole community to bring it up there, and there's a lot more. Let's just say concerns before we get there. So from the topics of toxicity in the gaming and esports environment, to the stigma of men have that men have in terms of women, especially in, let's say, an anonymous environment, which is gaming, and so on and so forth. So all of these we need to shoot down one at a time while we journey towards, let's just say, a complete harmonious inclusivity of women in the esports and gaming scene.
Thank you so much for your insight. Shamin, do you have any further thoughts to share on anything that Mitch has spoken about?
Absolutely. I think that that bridge that Mitch spoke about, it is being built, and we are walking across it. And I think we walk across when we go lockstep in partnership. But I think also that bridge has to include governance along the way, right? To make sure that those of us who are leaders in sport, in esport, are creating those opportunities. It could be a variety of opportunities, based on comfort levels of, the young athletes coming up, or cultural differences, and giving them, again, the innovation that those need to be able to walk together. Look, I mean, one of the very values of Global Esports Federation is around inclusivity. We want everyone to feel that there is a space for you at this table, whether it's the governance table, or the playing table, or athlete representation. But we have to do it in partnership with sponsors, media, these social platforms that we can use for good, and all the technology that we can use for good. Look, it's all about embracing each other and making everyone feel comfortable. Look, it's not going to happen overnight, but there is a lot of progress that is on its way, and we cannot do it alone. But I think we can do it if we do it together, and we do it based on the intrinsic values that really bind us. And that's about making sure that sport, esport, it's for all of us to embrace in the way that we consume it, and also done in an environment that is respectful, that's engaging, and that brings value to the individual, not just on the playing field or in the arena, but beyond that as well. Because as athletes in sport, and I know in Olympic sport, all my coaches, we talked about being great in the arena, but we also talked about how you give back and how you, those qualities that we learn from doing sports, from engaging, from working together, those are qualities that we take way beyond the arena of sport. So it's doing that together and walking that bridge together. And that was a great metaphor, Mitch. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Shami. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And now we'd like to move on to speak to Mitch proper about how it's like leading up the Southeast Asia operations for Galaxy Racer. So please tell us more about GXR's policies on recruiting. I'm very interested in why there's such a strong mandate to recruit professional women gamers, actually. So I'd really like to hear from you.
Well, Galaxy Racer has one goal at the end of the day. It's a fair representation of women in esports. And, in as much as we want that to happen, we typically didn't change a lot of things when it comes to recruiting women, because at the end of the day, it's equal representation. So they have to be treated equally. So from our open scouting tournaments to our, let's just say, relative network, in order to pinpoint which females around the world are the best at specific game titles, in order to build extremely good teams around these specific game titles and tournaments, is pretty much the same when it comes to how it is that we do it with men. Because at the end of the day, uh, it is not, well, not to compare to traditional sports, but it is not a physical sport. It is mental, it is fortitude, it is objective, it is skill at the end of the day. So it doesn't really matter whether it is that you're 6 foot high or just 5 foot high. At the end, we all have the same set of hands that can actually potentially lead us towards getting that championship trophy. So when it comes to this, in Galaxy Racer's perspective, it's about tackling a larger picture of
Mm-hmm.
the problems that we have when it comes to, let's just say, belongingness of women into the industry, or into the community, the ecosystem. So from the missing role models that we have for women in esports, for the fear of sexism of women in gaming, for the gender specified socialization problems that we have in terms of gaming and esports together, and the non-perception of women as a target group in the gaming community. These are the larger picture problems that we have currently that we want to battle out at the end of the day. And when it comes to Galaxy Racer, we do this on a step-by-step basis. Where we start recruiting women, we start empowering women, we start giving them all the resources that are available to us, equally to them, including them being able to train with the men of our teams. And that's not just in one specific geography, as we have about 11 to 13 teams around the world participating in 8 game titles. Essentially, you will immediately be part of a global organization that can train you almost instantly across a multitude of skills and personalities. And I like what Charmaine said a while ago about the mental fitness of everything when it comes to sports and esports alike. And Galaxy Racer is also very keen on making this happen. So, while we strive to look for a proper gaming psychologist in order to help our players maintain that fortitude when it comes to gaming and esports and their craft. These are factors that affect gaming extremely, or how it is that they actually participate in esports. Because at the end of the day, we all here, I think, are players in some regard, right? When that clash happens, and we just lose it, all of us. Doesn't matter whether you're male or female at the end of the day, right? Once you get killed, you just lose it. So it has to have that certain level of discipline, which I think Charmaine is an expert of because she's an Olympian. But everybody has to have that certain level of discipline when it comes to competitive sports at the end of the day, may it be sports traditionally or esports. So the larger picture when it comes to Galaxy Racer is what it is that we really want to funnel our resources into solving these problems, and we take it step by step. The inclusion of women in our teams, the participation of Galaxy Racer in particular, exclusive women tournaments, exclusive to women tournaments, and of course, bringing over that ecosystem open to opportunities for males and females alike, which of course also includes participating in gaming and esports, not only in the competitive side, but also on the corporate side of
That's right.
things.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
across everywhere, there has to be that perspective, the female perspective across everywhere, because unfortunately, as a man, I do not understand women 99% of the time. Even being married to my wife for almost 10 years, essentially, it's most men are clueless, to be honest, and that's a fact that we're willing to admit. And hearing the voice of women in the industry is of great value to us, most especially to men that are open to the idea already. And Galaxy Racer as a whole organization has a mandate to do that, to be open to as much as possible hire equally
Hmm.
when it comes to, let's say, for example, the number of women in our organization versus the number of men, and so on and so forth. So in terms of all of these things, we're not only doing it across the competitive scene, we're doing it across the board.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
we'd like to be that icon that all the other organizations in the world would see and understand that there is absolute value in the participation of women in this industry. Most especially, of course, like say, for example, for the likes of Joy, that women control most of the money in this industry and any other industry, to be honest. Like studies have been shown that more than 60% of the spending in gaming and esports are controlled by women, and only 40% by men. And it was so funny when I read that article or that study, primarily because it's the same thing in my personal experience. My
Hmm.
wife controls everything. I just get a gaming allowance every month, and so on and so forth. So in this particular regard, it goes without saying that in everything and everywhere, women have already a very good level of participation. And as a new young industry wherein we are trying to build a better one in that regard, we the inclusion of women is just an inevitable fact that needs to happen sooner rather than later. And the participation of organizations, associations, the general public, the media, and so on and so forth is, let's just say, a step towards that goal.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Sure.
So, did you face any roadblocks while trying to strive towards equality? What are the roadblocks or problems that you have faced?
There's a ton of roadblocks that we faced when it comes to the inclusivity of women in esports, to be honest. I've had players cry, primarily because when they train, you'd hear them, you'd see in the chats that the men, well, I'm not saying all men at the end of the day, but some men would go about, let's just say, very bad remarks.
Mhm.
When you
Well, this is what
fail,
we're
it's
talking.
your
This is what we're
fault.
talking.
you
This is
know
what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about earlier. Quite frankly, Tammy, just regarding, creating safe environments for everyone to feel that they belong here. And I think that when
Exactly.
we have things inherent in the rules of games, the standards, guidelines, rules, and then that encompassing that aspect of being in a safe environment is very, very critical. And it has to be that. It has to be that. Otherwise, the sports will not grow. They will not thrive. And I think also too that is also that sense of responsibility and accountability that we talked about, right? So, rules of the game, and I think those types of things, are certainly part of it. Look, I know that Joy is about to speak, but I want to pick up on the point on governance, why it's important to have leaders who are women sitting in those seats, right? I mean, you two, Tammy and Joy, you two are leaders in your field in esports, but you are also the phrase we say that to see them is to be them. So by you two being there in the esports field, that is inspiration. But we all need to do it together. Male allies, allies of all kind, of all ages, of all genders, working together and making sure that we continue to monitor and make sure that we can really measure the progress that we do together and put firm numbers on there too. I mean, data, there's so much data out there showing, there's some data that Mitch already threw out about, about spending or fan engagement, et cetera. The data is there. It's up to us to harness that and move forward with that and make sure that we have those structures in place, because we have a chance, I believe, in the esport world to create a system, right? To create that system through the foundation. And everyone involved now the growth is so fast, we're being accelerated, but we have to also stop and say sometimes, hey, are we being inclusive? How are we measuring ourselves when it comes to female participation? How are we measuring ourselves around the kind of environment, who we want to be? And at the end of the day, it comes back to our values, right? How do we want to have our values aligned with the everyday things that we are doing in order to make sport a place where people want to be part of? Anyway, sorry, Tammy, I'll go back to you because I know we got to go to Joy, who's waiting. She's got so much to say. Sorry,
Yes.
Joy.
Thank you, Charmaine, for your thoughts. And
Yeah.
Mitch, I think it's amazing how Galaxy Racer as an organization is, picking up this mantle and actually putting themselves out there and telling everyone we want to give equal opportunities and this is what we are going to do. It's like watch us, see where we are
Yeah,
going with this.
I
Is
completely
there
agree with all the points, and with you, especially with Charmaine. All her points are really valid and true, especially in the present scenario of things. And yeah, we'll just keep pushing at the end of the day. And once everybody sees that, we welcome
Yeah.
everybody joining this fight
Yeah, for sure.
and
Yeah,
in
we need
this effort.
everybody. We need
Yeah, we
everybody.
need everybody.
Yeah, especially Joy. Joy, you got lots to say. Let's go over to Joy. Sorry.
Yes. So now that we've heard how it's like from the standpoint of an athlete, the standpoint of an esports organization, let's speak with Joy, who has worked on both the receiving and pitching ends of sponsorships. So Joy, please tell us more about what the differences are in the ways that I guess you've experienced that men and women are marketed in esports.
Yeah, I feel that right now there's still a lot of differences when it comes to marketing of female athletes compared to our male athletes in esports. That's because of a lot of what Mitch said previously, where there's still a lot of stigma around female gamers and female athletes in esports. Female athletes are subjected to a lot more scrutiny than their male counterparts, basically. So whenever we decide to do any sort of marketing campaigns or want to do any sort of things with our female athletes, we always have to think about how we position them, how we portray them. Because as an esports organization, we are also there to protect our players as well. Because as we all know, there's a lot of haters out there. We've seen like female streamers and female players getting accused of like cheating, hacking, or being boosted. Like haters just can't wrap their head around a female athlete playing better than that they do, right? They can't wrap their head around women outperforming them basically. But I like to say that it's not just confined to esports or gaming. It's basically the same for any sort of male dominated industry, right? Where women always have to prove themselves, where they always have to work extra hard to show that they are legit, that they know what they are talking about, that they know what they are doing. And it's basically the same way it is here in esports, because esports is a male dominated industry. though we look at changing that and making it more inclusive, to include females and um, really like show that females do have the potential to perform with their male counterparts. But as Mitch mentioned, we definitely need the bridge, and the bridge being organizations who support their players, who support inclusion of female athletes. And as Charmaine mentioned, the government being there to support as well. And I think one of the biggest things will also be the publishers as well. So we see Riot, for example, they've stepped up. They've had all female league for Valorant, Game Changers, and it's it has helped this stigma and scrutiny against female players. It has helped people understand that, hey, these players can play really really well. Like they outperform a lot of us who are just normal gamers, right? So I think although marketing right now specifically is still very different between male and female players, it's getting a lot better. And it really takes that bridge to really help educate people, educate the audience, and really show that females are can be just as good as our male counterparts, basically. Yeah.
So,
And
what are the challenges and opportunities that women face when applying for sponsorships? And do you think they are similar or different to what men face?
Mm, I think when it comes to sponsorships, it's actually very similar because it all boils down to what are the objectives of a sponsor when they think of sponsoring a team or a player or an organization, right? The objectives are always about metrics. So to a sponsor, what's important are the numbers, your reach, your engagement, your impressions. It's not so much whether you're male or female, whether uh yeah, it's basically about your numbers. But the difference comes in where male players have been more established in esports for a longer time, so they do have that advantage where they are exposed to the mainstream tournaments. They have more exposure. So they have a lot more following. They've been in it a lot longer than the female athletes have been and stuff like that. So the difficulty for female athletes really comes in that it's still kind of new for them. So they still have to build up that presence. They still have to build up and establish themselves in the scene, basically. But when it comes to a sponsor, it's very plain and simple. It's about your numbers, like, because it's about promoting their brand, right? It's about expanding their brand recognition. So the more reach you have, the better it is for them. It's all about ROI. Yeah. But that being said, I do feel that sponsors need to get ahead of the game, basically. Like there's a lot of support coming in for female leagues and empowering women in esports, in gaming, and just like how a lot of times we segregate sponsorships and marketing into regions, like developed regions, developing and emerging markets. I feel that sponsors should also look at female leagues and female organizations as that developing or emerging market as well, and really get ahead of things and support building up these infrastructures to empower women and being inclusive of women in esports, basically. Yeah.
So,
that,
Mitch, is there anything that you'd like to pick up from what Joyce said and comment on or expand on?
Well, I completely agree with what Joy said there. You know, publishers can do a lot more at the end of the day. And when it comes to sponsorships, it really is about the numbers most of the time. It doesn't really matter whether or not it's male or female. But what matters is, I guess, where the change is. I guess it all boils down on the execution. So females completely approach sponsorships in a very different manner versus males in terms of perspective, of course. So that goes all the way from design to concept to execution, ideation, everything. And when it comes to it, a mixture of both is usually the best case scenario, wherein you welcome not only males but also females when it comes to whatever effort it is that you do through the sponsorship efforts. Not those typical logos on the jerseys and whatsoever, right? But when it comes to the creative executions, content, actual content that actually gets produced, awesome content that actually gets produced by this industry at the end of the day, is something extremely important because it already relates to to the hardest to reach audience in the world, which is Gen Z and millennials.
Mhm,
So
mhm, mhm.
it's a matter of how it is that you're going to involve all of these audiences and it's not going to be a one size fits all thing.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing experiment, like just like everything else. You test this, it works. You test, it works now, but it doesn't mean it's going to work like
Mhm.
a few months later or at least a day later. The trends that we have to ride on it right now, because they're not going to be trends in a few days or a week. So when it comes to all of these things, from marketing, sponsorships, and everything else, it's just about us being prepared on whatever it is that we want to, let's just say, uphold, in terms of not only when it comes to the trends but also the values that we input in those trends.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
so what it is,
I totally agree with that.
go ahead, Charmaine. Yeah.
No, no, I agree with that. No, no, you're absolutely right. I'm just thinking too, just to build on what you and Joy just said. It's also building out on the ecosystem, right? I mean, yes, you can get, female leadership is very important. Female gamers, because so many of them are banding together, and it's so wonderful to see, because we have that in traditional sport as well. You also have participation of players or even former athletes in active esports too. I mean, that's really growing as well as another area where we're seeing a lot of women, and also, education. We're seeing a lot of teams come through the education system as well. But the whole ecosystem, I believe, if esports speaks to the larger piece around STEM, like how women are engaged in the world of technology, which is another big world of mine as well. And I see so many programs that we've done, around the Black community, the Indigenous community, the transgender community. So I think all those things are so important when it comes to recognizing our inclusivity, right? And that esports is for everyone. And it may not be as a player, it might be as, again, I listed off all those people behind the scenes in sport who are making it happen. And they're all part of that team. Like, we see the players, and you're all in marketing, so you see what you have to do to get the players out there, but recognizing that it takes so many other people. So if there's young people that are, okay, what's in it for esports for me? Well, maybe that person is is going to be a game developer, or developing other things, or maybe they want to be a team leader or an esport doctor, right? I mean, on the GEF, we have amazing programs that touch the entire ecosystem of esport. I think of Dr. Melita Moore, our esport doctor. I think of our refugee programs that we have for esport players. I think of the many various organizations that we work with, from the AI sector to, I mean, just all over the world, over 100 nations. So you figure, if you have 100 nations, you'll have 100 different ideas and 100 different ways that we can inspire, and that we can get more diversity in the entire ecosystem. And of course, I know we're here speaking about women, and I think there has been, we're trying to as well, come up with the numbers. Like, we want X amount of percentage here and X amount of percentage here who are contributing, and finding that way, and again, working together to cross that bridge, which it seems to be the running theme here today. But
Yeah.
I think finally, before I bring it back to you, the whole notion of platforms as well. Like I think particularly for a lot of women, we use our platforms in those ways to be able to share these very kinds of things that do enact change. It might not happen quickly, but subtly and surely, and sometimes very quickly, a lot of change is happening. I think it's because of some of the very, very bold leaders and some of the very bold athletes who some in front of the camera, some behind, who are working to make change. I know that that's also happening very, very strongly in esport. I know all the work that Tammy and Joy are doing behind the scenes and in front of the scenes as well for the next generation of esport athletes.
Thank you, Charmaine, for your thoughts. Joy or Mitch, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah,
Go
well,
ahead, Joy.
thanks,
Yeah,
Mitch.
let's go with
Yeah.
Joy first.
I wholeheartedly agree with both what Charmaine and Mitch mentioned today. Like, uh, for me, I feel that there's a lot of education of the audience. Like, people need to
Mhm.
understand and to be more empathetic and not because we all know the gaming industry or rather gamers are a very toxic bunch basically. So it makes it extra hard for female athletes coming into the scene because um, they are subjected to so much scrutiny, like I mentioned, and um, it takes not only like the organizations, the government, um, the publishers and everything, like even the audience themselves need to be
Yeah.
educated that we need to empower, we need to support women in gaming. Like this is the next step to being a more inclusive community. We need to set up that ecosystem, like what Charmaine mentioned, basically. Yeah, and it takes everyone's effort. It's not just the effort of the people behind the scenes who are in esports. It also relies on the effort of the audience as well, being inclusive and being open minded about having females in gaming. That females can play to a high level and outperform male gamers as well and stuff like that. People just need to be more open minded about everything. I feel, and that comes from us as organizations, as sponsors, as government representatives to really educate the audience, basically. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Mitch, over to you for your closing
Yeah,
thoughts.
thanks, Tammy. There's actually a lot of good points in this discussion, but essentially, at the end of the day, it's just a matter of us doing our part
Mhm.
and bringing in the values that we want in order to shape the industry towards the ideal ecosystem that we'd like in terms of inclusivity for all genders
Mhm.
at the end of the day. So it's an effort that all of us need to do and work together, and all of us need to agree on in terms of values, in terms of experiences, in terms of efforts, and everything that we're going to do all the way together. And
Yeah.
it's prevalent already, and the bridge is really being built.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of organizations partnering with other organizations to make that happen. You see publishers putting out the effort to actually make that happen. You see associations like Charmaine's doing their own task and their own efforts on making this ecosystem full and holistic, inclusive of everyone that needs to be involved in it. And you see the numbers are climbing up. So to
Yeah.
me, actually, it's just only a matter of a little more time, and as long as we go back to work and do the things that we do, I think we'll achieve the goal sooner rather than later.
That's right. Keep moving
Yeah.
forward. And if I could just
Yep.
finish up on one word, Tammy, and what I started in the very beginning, talking about, a life in sport. And if it wasn't for fun, if it wasn't for being inspired by those who came before us, right? That's so important. And to remember that no matter, whatever we do, it should always be about fun. I think that's also a big part of it. Even it's competitive, but it should be about fun and leaving that legacy for the next generation.
Thank you so much, Charmaine. Thank you, Mitch, as well. And of course, thank you, Joy. I'm really happy to
Thank
hear
you.
about how all these organizations are pushing forward with the agenda of diversity and inclusion and equity. And I'll be looking forward to see all the big things that are going to be happening. Um, so, yes, thank you so much for your time on this
Thank
panel.
you. Thank you,
And till
Tammy. You
next
were
Yeah.
time.
great too. Thank
Thanks for
you.
having
Thank
us,
you so
Tammy.
much, guys.
Bye
Thanks,
bye. Nice meeting
guys.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.